Luka Dončić, ex-fiancée, is reportedly asking for $50 million in child support, and the way she's living has people talking. From luxury homes to an expensive lifestyle, there's a lot tied to that massive demand. Let's break it down. This week, the story around Luka Dončić's family took a turn nobody saw coming. According to TMZ, Dončić is locked in an international custody battle, as former fiancée Anna-Maria Goltis seeks a $50 million settlement and a cut in his time with their two daughters. Not child support in the traditional sense. Not a monthly number tied to school fees or medical bills, a lump sum. $50 million, and the breakdown is what really got people talking. Sources with direct knowledge say Goltis has proposed taking an 80% share amounting to roughly $40 million for herself, while allocating the remaining 20%, totaling $10 million for their two young daughters. 80-20 her, then the kids. That split is the detail that turned this from a quiet legal filing into a headline everyone had an opinion on. There's more attached to the ask. The proposed settlement also seeks to reduce Dončić's parental access from 2 days a week down to 1. So it's not just money on the table, it's time with his own daughters too. Less of it. TMZ's sourcing lays out the same math. Sources with direct knowledge tell TMZ Anna-Maria has filed a new claim in Slovenia, and she is seeking $40 million for herself, with the remaining $10 million assumed to be for their two daughters. And on the custody piece specifically, the outlet reported she wants to strip Luka of some of his custody rights. Currently, he has the kids at least 2 days a week, and she wants to reduce it to 1 day a week. Here's where it gets stranger. Just days before this number surfaced, it looked like the whole fight was cooling off. Goltis had gone to a Los Angeles court and asked to drop her original child support case. In her own words, filed with the court, she wrote that she was withdrawing her petition with the specific intention of resolving this matter amicably and by a mutual agreement which is in the best interest of our children. For about 48 hours, that read like good news for Dončić. One outlet covering it noted that when TMZ reported days ago that Dončić's ex-fiancée had withdrawn her child support petition, it looked like things were finally turning around for Luka. But that relief was short-lived, as TMZ broke another story detailing shocking new developments in a case that seems to have no end in sight. Because the withdrawal in California wasn't the end of anything. It was a redirect. Goltis subsequently launched her new claims in Slovenia following the procedural rejection of her California withdrawal request, moving the legal focus back to Slovenia. The dismissal itself hit a snag too. Court records show Anna-Maria's request to dismiss was rejected by the court due to the paperwork missing Luka's signature. So within the same week, a withdrawal, a rejection, and a brand new $50 million claim filed on a different continent. That's the timeline that's now playing out in public. And it's the reason this story exploded across NBA media, gossip sites, and sports talk shows almost simultaneously. The reaction from outside the family was immediate. Former NFL receiver Dez Bryant didn't hold back when the number hit his timeline. He wrote that the situation felt like extortion at its finest, using his kids against him. That child is going to grow up realizing she were treated like a pawn crazy. That's one voice. It won't be the last. Basketball commentary accounts weighed the dollar figure against Dončić's own paycheck, pointing out that while $10 million for his daughters shouldn't pose a massive issue for Dončić, who is currently playing under a $165 million contract and is lined up for a deal worth at least double that next, the $40 million for Goltis herself is a different conversation entirely. And then there's the custody hearing date sitting on the calendar the whole time this played out. A court date that, according to multiple reports, was still scheduled for August 14, even after the back and forth over withdrawals and new filings. So while headlines argued over the number, an actual judge was still waiting to hear the case. That's the shape of the story right now. A $50 million ask, a reduced custody request, a withdrawal that didn't stick, and a second filing in a second country. To understand how a relationship that started when they were basically kids turned into this, you have to go back, because this didn't start in a courtroom. It started in a small Slovenian town, years before either of them had a dollar to fight over. Before there was a filing, a lawyer, or a headline, there were two teenagers in Slovenia. Anna-Maria Goltis and Luka Dončić didn't meet as basketball royalty and a model, they met as kids. Multiple profiles on Goltis described the pair having met when they were 12 and attended the same school in Slovenia, becoming friends and soon developing romantic feelings, before starting to date in 2013. Some accounts place the actual introduction earlier still, describing her as having met Luka Dončić when she was 12 during a family vacation in Croatia, a meeting that would later shape her life and career. Either way, The through line is the same. This wasn't a relationship built in the NBA spotlight. It predates the spotlight entirely. Dončić was still years from his first professional contract. Goltes was still in school, eventually enrolling at the University of Ljubljana, where by most accounts she studied marketing at the School of Economics and Business. While Dončić's career took off, Real Madrid, then the NBA draft, then Dallas, Goltes was building something of her own alongside him. She didn't just become a name attached to a famous boyfriend. She started modeling, working with Slovenian brands, eventually landing bigger placements. One widely cited bio has her launching her modeling career in 2017 with Liska Lingerie, before working with other prominent names, and later scoring a cover feature with Cosmopolitan Slovenia. She built an Instagram following that would eventually climb into the hundreds of thousands, sharing fitness routines, travel content, and glimpses of a relationship that fans had watched from a distance for close to a decade. By the time Dončić was an established NBA All-Star, Goltes was appearing at his side at league events, draft news, and trade announcements. Never quite a public figure in her own right in America, but recognized instantly across Slovenia and, increasingly, across NBA social media. The relationship hit its most public milestone in the summer of 2023. Dončić proposed at Lake Bled, one of Slovenia's most photographed locations, and the news lit up NBA fan accounts overnight. The reaction wasn't universally serious. Plenty of fans online reacted with jokes rather than well wishes, but the core sentiment was that a nearly decade-long relationship had reached its natural next step. A December that same year brought their first daughter. 2 years later, a second daughter arrived. On paper, everything about the trajectory looked stable. A childhood romance, a long courtship, an engagement, 2 kids, and one of the most recognizable young stars in basketball building a family with the same woman he'd known since before he was famous. Then came the trade. Dončić's move from Dallas to the Los Angeles Lakers reshaped his career overnight, and it reshaped his family's logistics just as fast. Suddenly, the question of where the kids would actually live, Los Angeles, where his season is played, or Slovenia, where Goltes and her family were based, stopped being theoretical. It became the fault line that cracked the entire relationship. Reports on the split described the disagreement in blunt terms. Conflicts over where their daughters would stay during the NBA season became the flashpoint that ended a relationship that had survived over a decade of long-distance stretches, trade rumors, and public scrutiny. Dončić wanted his daughters in the US with him during the season. Goltes wanted to remain in Slovenia, near her own family and support system, with the girls. That single disagreement, a scheduling and geography problem at its core, is what turned a childhood love story into a legal filing. In March, Dončić confirmed publicly that the engagement was over. He told ESPN directly that he loved his daughters more than anything and had been trying to make it possible for them to be with him in the US during the season, but that it hadn't worked out, so he'd made the difficult decision to end the engagement. He added that everything he does is for his daughter's happiness, and that he'd always fight to be with them and give them the best life he could. It read at the time like a clean, mature statement, a couple choosing to separate without airing grievances. But behind that statement, paperwork was already moving. And what came next is where the story stopped being about a breakup and started being about money, jurisdiction, and a fight that would eventually produce a $50 million number. The first real shot in this legal fight didn't come from Dončić. It came from Goltes, and it landed in an unexpected place. Not Slovenia, where the family had actually been living, but Los Angeles County. Court documents show Goltes filed a petition for child support in a Los Angeles court. And notably, her filing made a point of stating she was not seeking any custody orders, only support in attorney's fees. That distinction mattered because it meant the fight, at least initially, was purely financial. Dončić's camp didn't see it as a routine filing. They saw it as forum shopping. In documents obtained by reporters, Dončić accused Goltes of filing in California specifically to benefit from the state's higher child support formulas, despite the fact that neither parent nor either daughter actually lived there. His filing argued that the petition was invalid because he, Goltes, and their 2 daughters were not California residents. He pointed out that he'd already filed a family law action back in Slovenia the month before, and claimed Goltes knew about that filing and chose California anyway to try to access what his team called more generous support amounts. That accusation set the tone for everything that followed. This wasn't going to be a quiet negotiation handled by two sets of lawyers behind closed doors. It was going to be a fight over which country's courts even had the right to decide anything. The residency details underline exactly why jurisdiction became the battleground. Court records show Dončić moved back to Slovenia with their older daughter in May of the prior year. Well before any of this became public, their younger daughter was born in Slovenia that December. Both girls have lived there continuously since. Dončić, for his part, had already initiated custody proceedings in Slovenia the month before Dončić's California filing, a sequence his legal team leaned on heavily to argue that Slovenia, not California, was the proper venue. Dončić didn't handle this quietly either. He brought in serious legal firepower, hiring divorce attorney Laura Wasser, a lawyer with a reputation significant enough that NBA fans and legal adjacent commentators reacted the moment her name became public. Wasser has represented some of the most high-profile splits in celebrity history, and her involvement signaled that Dončić's side was treating this as a real fight, not a formality. For a while, it looked like his strategy was working. He filed to dismiss Dončić's California petition outright, arguing it had no legal grounds given that everyone involved actually lived in Slovenia. A hearing on that motion got scheduled for mid-August, and then, days before that hearing, Dončić blinked or appeared to. She filed to withdraw her own petition, stating in her own words that she wanted to resolve things amicably and by mutual agreement, in the best interests of the children. On the surface, that reads like someone stepping back from a fight. Reports covering the withdrawal treated it as a clear win for Dončić. One outlet's headline flatly called it a legal win, framing the dismissal as Dončić conceding that her original case had nowhere to go. Dončić had for a moment come out ahead. The case that could have forced him into California's support formulas was gone, and his argument about jurisdiction had effectively been proven right without a judge even needing to rule. But withdrawing a petition in one country doesn't mean stepping back from the underlying disagreement. It means moving it somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened next. The fight didn't end with the withdrawal. It relocated, and it came back bigger than before. The California withdrawal lasted less than a week before it became irrelevant. Almost immediately, TMZ reported that Dončić had taken the entire fight to Slovenia, and this time, she wasn't asking for an open-ended, court-determined support amount. She'd attached an actual number to it, $50 million, split 80-20 in her favor, with a request to cut Dončić's time with his daughters down to 1 day a week from the 2 he'd been getting. The size of the number is what makes this phase of the story different from everything before it. A support petition with an unspecified sum is a legal formality. $50 million, broken into an $40 million personal payout, and a $10 million allocation for 2 children is a negotiating position, one designed either to force a settlement or to make headlines, possibly both. Reaction poured in fast, and it wasn't limited to one voice. Des Bryant's extortion comment became the most quoted reaction, but he wasn't alone in reacting publicly. NBA-adjacent commentary accounts immediately ran the math against Dončić's own contract situation, pointing out that he's currently playing under a deal worth $165 million and is expected to be in line for something worth roughly double that on his next contract, meaning the $10 million portion attached to his daughters is one conversation and the $40 million attached to Dončić personally is an entirely separate one, in the eyes of fans doing the arithmetic themselves. Analysts covering the Lakers' off-season plans noted the timing collision here too. Dončić has been trying to build chemistry with his new teammates, reportedly hosting the entire Lakers roster for a multi-day minicamp in Ljubljana in the weeks leading into training camp, a chance to extend his time in Slovenia with his daughters before the demands of an NBA season pull him back to Los Angeles. That's the backdrop this $50 million figure landed against, a father trying to carve out structured time in his home country, while a court process in that same country now threatens to shrink the access he already has. Dončić's side of this hasn't been silent either, even if it's mostly come through her attorneys and court filings rather than personal statements. Her own words, submitted directly to the California court, remain the clearest window into her stated position. She wants an agreement that serves the children's best interests, reached mutually rather than imposed by a judge. Whether a $50 million lump sum with an 80-20 split constitutes that kind of mutual agreement is exactly the question hanging over the Slovenian proceedings now. There's also the matter of what each side actually has and doesn't have financially. Estimates on Goltes's own net worth vary wildly depending on the source. Some put it as low as $1 million to $2 million, others closer to $5 million, built from a modeling career. Sponsored content deals in the $300 to $500 per post range, and work as a certified fitness coach. Whatever the real figure, it isn't close to Dončić's. And that gap is part of why a $50 million ask reads as aggressive to some observers. And as a serious attempt to secure long-term stability for two young children to others, the custody reduction piece of the request is arguably the part that's drawn the sharpest reactions, separate from the money entirely. Reducing a father's guaranteed time from 2 days a week to 1, attached to a financial settlement, is the detail that turned this from a support dispute into something that reads, to critics, like leverage. Bryant's comment zeroed in on exactly that pairing. Tying a dollar figure to reduced access to children is what triggered his blunt public response, and it's the same pairing that's driven most of the social media reactions since. Meanwhile, the procedural clock hasn't stopped, even with the withdrawal. The rejection of that withdrawal on a technicality, and the new Slovenian filing, the original California court date, tied to Dončić's motion to dismiss, remained on the books for mid-August. That means there are, at least on paper, 2 active legal fronts running at once. One in Los Angeles, addressing whether the case ever belonged there in the first place, and one in Slovenia now carrying an actual settlement figure attached to it. For a story that started as a quiet breakup announcement in March, it's grown into something with real financial stakes, an international jurisdiction fight, a celebrity divorce attorney, a viral price tag, and public commentary. From names as far outside basketball as a retired NFL wide receiver, and all of it traces back to 2 people who first knew each other as preteens in Slovenia, long before either of them had anything resembling $50 million to argue about. As of the most recent filings, nothing about this case is settled. The Slovenian claim is active. The California motion to dismiss is still sitting on a court calendar. And the $50 million figure, whether it ends up as a genuine settlement number, a negotiating opener, or something that quietly shrinks once lawyers actually sit down, hasn't been confirmed by either side beyond what's leaked through TMZ's sourcing. What is confirmed is the shape of the disagreement underneath all of it. Dončić wants his daughters spending real time with him in the United States during the season. Goltis wants to keep raising them in Slovenia, near her own family, on her own terms. Every filing, every withdrawal, every jump from one country's courts to another has been a variation on that same disagreement. Money and custody, tangled together, each side using whatever legal lever is available to push the outcome their way. The public reaction has split roughly the way you'd expect. Some see a mother trying to secure long-term financial stability for 2 young children, whose father makes more in a single season than most people will earn in several lifetimes. Others see the 80-20 split and the custody reduction request, and land closer to Bryant's read on it, that using access to children as part of a financial negotiation crosses a line, regardless of how much money either parent has. Dončić, for his part, has kept his public statements narrow and consistent since March. He said his daughter's happiness is the only thing driving his decisions, and that he'll always fight to be with them. Whether that fight plays out through Wasser's legal strategy in Los Angeles, through the newer proceedings in Slovenia, or through an actual negotiated settlement that never sees a courtroom, is still an open question heading into the fall. There's also the matter of timing that neither side can control. Dončić's Lakers season is approaching, and the structure of his custody time, 2 days a week, or 1, depending on how this resolves, will directly shape how often he sees his daughters once the schedule tightens up. The Ljubljana minicamp with his new teammates was, by most accounts, partly about maximizing his time at home before that structure locks back into place. If the Slovenian proceedings move toward reducing his access before the season starts, that window gets smaller fast. For Goltis, the stakes run in a different direction. She's raising 2 very young daughters largely on her own, in a country where the family's public profile is enormous, while managing a modeling and influencer career that, by most estimates, generates a fraction of what Dončić earns in a single game check. Whatever number the 2 sides eventually land on, if they land on one at all, will define what her daughter's day-to-day life looks like for years, long after the headlines about the case fade. What's clear is that this didn't end when Goltis filed her withdrawal in California, and it didn't end when TMZ broke the news of the Slovenian filing either. Court dates are still pending, Attorneys on both sides are still working, and two little girls, too young to understand any of the numbers, being argued over on their behalf, are the reason none of it stops until a judge or a signed agreement finally says it does.